Welcome. On behalf of the UNDP team in Dominica, the Guidance Project thanks you for joining in on this exciting talk this evening as we explore finance, value chain, and CSA in disaster risk reduction. My name is Natasha Yuloy-Labad, and I will be your moderator for this discussion. And I am joined by my esteemed panelists, which I will introduce in a moment. I want to take this opportunity to share that on behalf of the UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, and partners, we are discussing agriculture. My panelist, Mr. Kent Koppel, technical specialist in the IICA delegation in Dominica, Nekelia Gregoire-Carai, technical specialist in water and soil with the IICA delegation. Monica Rogers-Fletcher is a microfinance consultant and executive director at the John Maxwell team, and of course, a certified disc behavioral and analysis consultant and professional coach. I also have with us Joan Hillaire, an avid Agro-Processor from the beautiful village of Delicis in the parish of St. Patrick in the southeast of the island, on our beautiful island of Dominica, and the Honorable, or I should say Ambassador Francine Gregoire, who is the Executive Director of CREAD Dominica, the Climate Resilience Agency of Dominica, with a very ambitious mandate to take Dominica through a new level of resiliency. Again, I welcome you and our panelists. I will just share briefly that we will engage in a discussion on finance, value chain, and climate smart agriculture in disaster risk reduction. As indicated previously, I have our panelists who are very able to discuss agriculture. And so in that regard, I would like to welcome my first panelist, who is Mr. Kent Koppel. Mr. Coipel is the technical specialist in the IICA delegation in Dominica. He holds a Master's of Science in Agribusiness and Marketing from the University of the West Indies and a Bachelor's of Science in Agronomy. His professional career has extended to working as a technical officer at the Dominica Bureau of Standards. He has been a marketing officer at the Dominica Export and Import Agency. He really needs no introduction, for he has done so much for agriculture on our beautiful island. However, we are joined by our esteemed panelist, Mr. Kent Koppel, and on that note, I welcome him to this panel discussion and to make his presentation at this time.
Okay, thank you for this welcome. Let me say good evening to all the panelists, the moderator, and the many listeners or viewers of this panel discussion. Let me just first thank UNDP for inviting me to be part of this discussion, especially on a theme that is very dear to us in terms of empowering and improving the livelihood and building resilience among our vulnerable groups. And today's theme, preparing communities today for disaster resilience tomorrow, is something that we can contribute to because of our involvement working very closely with the UNDP and the project entitled Strengthening Disaster Management Capacity of Women in the Cooperative of Republic of Guyana as well as in Dominica. This is a project that has been funded by the Japanese government, and we are actually responsible for assisting in the implementation of Output 2, which deals with community resilience strengthening using the gender responsive disaster risk reduction and alternative livelihood approaches. So I'm happy that we are here, that we can make a contribution to support the theme based on a number of areas. I will focus on the area of value chain development, while my colleague Monica and Nekelia will deal with other aspects that are all results under the output 2 that we'll be working on. So I would like to just, as a sort of teaser in terms of some of the things that we are trying to achieve by way of the theme in terms of resilience, and I would like to tie it in with two key considerations. One is the resilience and sustainability in the agricultural system that should be throughout not just the supply chain, but throughout the value chain. We focus on resource use efficiency, the application and adoption of technology and innovation, smart production system and practices, and exposure, as well as the issue of risk reduction. As well as we'd like to look at the agro entrepreneurship and value creation as an integral part or integral parts of the national agricultural system that fosters and facilitates innovation and resilient agribusiness, risk sensitive, climate smart, and sustainable practices for improvement in productivity, value addition, marketing, and trade. The reason why I would like to start the discussion in that light is to recognize that when we speak now of strengthening livelihood, we cannot leave out the element of building resilience. And resilience is not only at the production end, but throughout the entire value chain, throughout the entire system, as well as we're looking at even as much as into the market. So under the value chain development program or the project or the activity that we were doing, we what we did was to try to get an understanding of the market, looking at priority value chains, and I can make mention of a number of value chains that we identified that were actually in among the women in various communities, and we could speak to toluma, cassava, and some of the roots and tubers to include dashing, sweet potato, and yams. So these were some of the common commodities of or priority commodities that were most of our women in those rural territories are involved in. Now, we also wanted to identify some of the barriers and opportunities where livelihood and climate disaster risk resilience can be sustainably and significantly enhanced. So therefore, part of what we did was to do the comprehensive analysis to identify first these market opportunities, some of the areas that were weak, some of the areas that we had some strengths, identify some of the barriers that prevented persons or to what would we consider to be an increase in the vulnerabilities of these women, as well as looking at opportunities that may present itself in terms of the current situation and how we could enhance some of those existing situations to improve their resilience as well as their livelihoods. Some of the things that we identified that were critical is little knowledge of the market opportunities and somewhat poor linkages between producers and market, poor linkages or poor relationships among the chain actors, the value chain actors, or persons along the value chain, weak mechanism to foster linkage with other sectors, issues of technology, issues of cost of inputs, and these are some of the critical things that we have identified during the analysis. Now, it's important that we really understand the relationship among the chain actors to really understand the role that they are playing. We need to understand the processes they're involved in and to understand how they interact and where we can identify some of the best practice, where we can identify some of the weak links, and what we need to do to improve this relationship to enhance again resilience among the women or producers, both in terms of primary production and processing. Now, the project allows us to do all this analysis with the view of improving or building resilience. And the reason I'm going to spend a little time to talk about the intervention in terms of the technical assistance and what we'll be doing to ensure that we can continue to support the women. We will not be able to address all the issues. Certainly, what we would like to do is to focus on one or two of the value chains that we could work with to improve the issue of competitiveness among the people involved in production, in terms of market competitiveness, in terms of quality competitiveness, as well as some level of sustainability. So what we have done is to explore some of the opportunities that the market presents itself, and we identify some of the critical areas that we would like to to work towards. And one of the areas that we would like to support is the issue of brand development. And in so doing, we would like to look at things as packaging technology, labels, in terms of some of the traditional marks that we would like to promote some of these things and to create that kind of differentiated product, to understand the buyers in the regional, international, and even in the domestic market. And part of what we would like to see at the end of it is to have a sort of an e-commerce platform that will sort of make the contact between the buyers and the producers much more relevant. And while on that, I'm sure that most of us would have recognized the COVID pandemic also sort of give us a new hint as to how we should do business. And that e-commerce platform certainly is one of the things that we would like to see grow, so that people can access products and access markets with limited physical presence, to support the improvement of operations of the beneficiaries. And that will be a direct support by way of use of technology, equipment, packaging material, to improve production systems by utilizing the right equipment and improving basically some of the operations that we thought that could move quickly in terms of linking the producers to market. We also want to spend some time strengthening the focus group, the producer groups, the processor groups, because they play an integral role in terms of the livelihood. They play an integral role in terms of resilience. We know that we have to deal with in issues of information, consolidation, access to input, access to market information. And basically we are, based on some of the clusters that we have identified, if those focus groups are working efficiently, it certainly can provide the kind of services to support their members, as well as to ensure that some level of sustainability in what they do by way of their business. These are some of the critical things that we have identified, and I know it's something that we would like to continue to do as it relates to the enhancement of those value chains. So it is a critical aspect. What we would like to do is to ensure that as part of building resilience, we will look in more in terms of the issue of livelihood from a point of view of sustainability, ensuring that the relationships among the chain actors, the relationship with the market exist, but more so to adopt the kind of adaptive technologies that will ensure sustenance in the event of an event. Now, I just want to wrap up by just again reflecting on the theme. And when we talk about preparing communities today for disaster resilience tomorrow, we want to really look first at how we can reduce on the vulnerabilities. You may not be able to eliminate, but you could reduce and to protect the clients against some of those vulnerabilities. But also we do have to be able to respond timely and respond quickly in the event of these calamities or the storms. And after the storm, we have to be able to recover. So these are some of the things that we are hoping that what we are promoting, the technologies that we are promoting, the best practice that we are promoting, certainly will allow these basic principles to be addressed as we build the resilience among those value chains. So that is it for me as a starter in terms of this discussion. And I will be prepared to answer questions at the point when we have the discussion session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kent Koppel from the IICA Dominica Delegation. We are talking agriculture, and under the theme Preparing Communities Today for Disaster Resilience Tomorrow, the objective of this panel discussion is really to highlight the important work of the UNDP project team here in Dominica and in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and as it relates specifically to livelihood and building resilience while paying attention to the differential needs of women and men. We are talking finance and climate smart agriculture, and we are also talking about building resilience into our agricultural sectors. I now invite the microfinance specialist, Monica Rogers, who is is going to bring a focus on the project, specifically as it relates to microfinance and what has been happening to provide that technical assistance to our women farmers and men farmers, of course, as we build resilience into and strengthen the livelihoods of our farmers, both here in Dominica and Guyana.
Good evening, everyone, and I just want to say a special thank you to you, Natasha, and to the UNDP and, of course, IICA for inviting me to be a part of this panel and inviting me to contribute to the development of a microfinance mechanism that would meet the needs of this project, where there's a huge focus on what I would say are three important words. And we've heard Kent, and he's already talked about one of them. And I agree. One of the most important words we looked at when my team and I when we were looking at this project and conceptualizing how to approach it. We looked at three words. The words are resilience, capacity, and livelihood. Resilience, capacity, and livelihood. And as we approach the project by, first of all, doing a situational analysis among the farmers themselves, both men and women, and the financial as well as non-financial institutions that were involved in supporting these farmers, we approached it from the perspective of resilience, capacity, and livelihood, all of these in the context of climate disaster management and reduction. And this allowed us to zero in on a microfinance mechanism that we thought, and we used the information that we gathered, would meet the needs of the potential beneficiaries, the loan beneficiaries, which would be the women of the parishes that were identified in Dominica, as well as the Kalinago women. And we felt, our team, that once we address these issues, we would be able to successfully deliver a microfinance mechanism that would meet the needs. My perhaps unique experience in development banking, as well as being a business coach, enabled me to immediately discern the key synergies that could be derived from addressing not just the obvious technical capacity building requirements that the loan beneficiaries would need, but also how important it would be to combine those technical skills with the personal growth and development of the women themselves. In fact, the odds of building resilience and capacity, and therefore the willingness of the women to invest in alternative livelihoods, most likely would not be achievable without this dual approach. Our strategy, therefore, is designed to provide, the microfinance strategy is designed to provide, first of all, the what, which is holistic stakeholder supported finance, the how, training and technical support, and the why, vision and purpose that brings with them the desire to more fully engage, brings to the women the desire to more fully engage in the process and the drive to continue even when difficulties arise. In other words, resilience and capacity. Resilience is perhaps the most important word. What it meant to our team was that structures to support resilience should certainly be in place, but more importantly, the beneficiaries themselves, the rural and Kalinago women, must be able to strengthen and reinforce their inherent resilience, their courage, confidence, and commitment to stay with their enterprises for the long haul through whatever disasters and crises they may encounter. Therefore, in developing the microfinance mechanism, we catered for technical support as well as personal growth and development. Technical support includes training in good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices from the perspective of climate-smart agricultural strategies. Among the most innovative and useful is the inclusion of parametric insurance, which is hurricane-based insurance coverage with digitalized assessment and payment of claims supported by a mobile wallet platform. And we were fortunate in that one of the financial institutions selected to identified to administer this microfinance mechanism did in fact possess those resources. Now, life and business coaching and mentoring were also included to address the issues of courage and confidence, commitment and performance, key attributes in building resilience. I can say with all certainty that to really build resilience, we just can't build it in the institution and the infrastructure. We must build it in the people involved, in this case, the women identified. The second word we looked at was capacity. And our microfinance strategy includes the opportunity to build the technical capacity of the loan beneficiaries, as well as the personnel of the financial and non-financial institutions that we identified would support the administration of the process. One key component in this regard is the provision of customer service interventions in order that these personnel would build empathy with the potential loan beneficiaries and so solicit higher levels of engagement from them. Because one of the areas that we identified when we did the situational analysis is that a lot of the women, based on the problems that they experience, intend to withdraw and not get involved even when opportunities were available for them. So that having personnel through the financial institutions administering the mechanism that understood that and that could empathize with them, we thought would draw them to fuller engagement. But the mechanism also includes an intensive program of professional, individual, and team coaching for both the women as well as the personnel of the institutions to enhance their emotional intelligence, identify the gaps between their existing state and their desired objectives. In other words, this is where we are now, this is where we want to go, what's in the gap, and our intention is to equip them to uncover both the technical issues as well as the self-limiting beliefs in the gap that prevent them from advancing towards the results that would make them successful as far as this project is concerned. The third word, livelihood, is about equipping the women to develop enterprises that would be profitable and could generate sufficient income to support themselves and their dependents. The microfinance mechanism provides the capital funding for investments. The personal growth and development programs support their fuller engagement and commitment to the process. As a young branch manager and later as a corporate manager credit at the Agriculture Development Bank in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I live, my experience was perhaps similar to many when recruiting new team members. Young aspirants, though intellectually qualified, invariably did not always possess the maturity, empathy, patience, character, nor attitude to perform their jobs well. Institutions are only now beginning to buy into the need for professional growth through coaching and leadership skills development as a primary avenue to improve these areas, as well as cement purpose and goals and enhance aptitude and receptivity to growth and learning. These are required in just young people that we are hiring. These are also required in the women that we would like to engage in these different agriculture-based activities and increase their willingness to invest in alternative livelihoods. All of these are what it takes to develop higher levels of performance. In other words, build resilience, capacity, and enhance livelihoods. The microfinance mechanism was therefore developed with these words in mind and using a holistic, stakeholder supported approach, which includes amenable lending terms and credit terms, personal development, training and support, good credit supervision and loan administration, risk mitigation measures, fallback positions with respect to the parametric insurance and the strategy that the microfinance mechanism contains for loan collateral, along with peer and group support as identified previously by Kent. Relevant and effective implementation and training plans are also included to ensure the effective rollout of the mechanism and the building of resilience and capacity of the beneficiaries, the loan beneficiaries, the rural women and the Kalinago women, to encourage them to be more willing and committed to invest in alternate and profitable livelihoods. So I would stop here at this point in time because I believe I have shared quite a bit of information with regard to the approach that we have taken for the development of the microfinance mechanism. And of course, I'll be very happy to respond to any questions with regard to this later on in our presentation.
Thank you so much, Monica Rogers-Fletcher, for your candid share as it relates to microfinance and providing the assistance to our farmers, both here and in Dominica, on this exciting project as we talk agriculture. If you are joining in, this is UETV, and we are bringing you a panel discussion on preparing communities today for disaster resilience tomorrow. On behalf of the United Nations Development Program, and the Inter-America Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA, this panel discussion is part of a week of activities under the theme Preparing Communities Today for Disaster Resilience Tomorrow. My next panelist, and we are very pleased to welcome her, is Francine Byron, the Chief Executive Officer of the Climate Resilience Execution Agency of Dominica. Francine Byron is Dominican, a lawyer by training, holds a postgraduate degree in law from the University of Wolverhampton and the University of London, respectively. Ms. Byron has served Dominica in a diplomatic she has served, in the diplomatic service of Dominica as High Commissioner in London. And of course, she's also served as Attorney General and Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs. We are very pleased to introduce the CEO of the Climate Resilience and Execution Agency of Dominica, CREAD, as she has a very important task, among others, lending and coordinating strategic initiatives across sectors that support the implementation of Dominica's climate resilience recovery plan. So on that note, I would like to welcome our next panelist, Miss Francine Byron.
Thank you, and good evening, Natasha, and good evening to the other panelists and our viewing audience and listening audience. And I really want to thank you for the opportunity for CREAD to participate in this discussion this evening and to speak specifically to the flexible hurricane protection product that was developed by CREAD. We live in a disaster-prone region where we have had to contend with hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. And for many of us in the Caribbean, the 2017 hurricane season was really a wake-up call. It was a vivid illustration of how vulnerable we are and how a single storm can reverse a decade of gains in mere hours. Climate change increases our vulnerability. It makes the hurricanes more intense. Drought, rising sea levels, ocean acidification. All of these and more are harmful effects that we must plan for in the hope of limiting its impact on our lives and livelihoods. When we look at how far Dominica has come in recovering after Hurricane Maria, for those who did not live through it, it is probably difficult to imagine that 90% of homes were damaged and in some cases completely destroyed, that 95% of our agriculture was flattened. For many people, recovery was difficult because they were either not insured or they were underinsured and only got a fraction of what they thought they were insured for. It has been reported that only about 20% of persons were insured. Since Maria, Dominica has been on a journey to become climate resilient. And this includes us being able to weather a disaster and bounce back, or bounce forward, as I prefer to say, bounce forward more quickly. For that to happen, we need to take action to minimize our losses and have the funds to repair, to rebuild, replant, restock faster. How can we have the money that we need to recover after a storm? We grew up hearing the phrase, save for a rainy day. Well, that is very important. But we can also consider spreading the risk by getting insurance. Now, traditional indemnity insurance requires you to have an asset, whether it's a home or a car, and that will be valued, and you will be charged a premium to cover the replacement cost of that asset if it is damaged or destroyed. In many instances, persons are unable to get insurance to insure their livelihoods. If you're a farmer, a small business owner renting premises, etc., women are particularly disadvantaged in that in many instances they do not own the property in which they reside or run their businesses or the land or on which they plant their crops. So as part of CREAD's mandate to look at resilience broadly, we considered what actions could be taken to manage risks and to make individuals and communities more resilient. We were particularly concerned at the low insurance rate, and we considered what product could be developed that would provide some livelihood protection for individuals. So we worked with some of our partners to develop a parametric insurance product that is similar to the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, or CRIF, that is available to governments only, but to make it available at the micro level to individuals. So in April to May this year, we piloted the Flexible Hurricane Protection product. And this is a parametric protection product that is delivered on a blockchain platform. It is different from indemnity insurance in that you are not insuring a particular asset that would have to be damaged and assessed before you receive payment. Protection could be taken out for anything, such as your home, livelihood, businesses, crops. It is a parametric product, which means that once certain pre-agreed parameters are triggered, then payment is automatic. So for the pilot, the parameters chosen were wind-based. Two things were being monitored: the storm strength and the proximity of the eye of the storm to Dominica. Protection could be purchased for either category 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 storm, or just a tropical storm, or for all 5 categories. It was flexible in that you could choose the level of protection you wanted. There was a wide range of coverage options, and you could choose how much you wanted to spend, and payouts could be used for anything. So for example, if I purchased protection from a category 1 storm, and it passed within the agreed distance of Dominica, I would not have to file a claim. I would simply receive a notification that the parameter had been triggered, and within 15 days, the money would be in my bank account for me to use. So I would not have to prove that I suffered any damage whatsoever. So the benefits of this product includes certainty of payout. So the payout is predetermined based on the policy option that you select. So there's no need for an assessor to come and look at the property, see what damage was caused, and ultimately tell you that you were underinsured and pay you a fraction of what you thought you were insured for. There's speed of payout. So if the triggering event occurs, payment will be made within 15 days, giving you cash when you need it the most. And of course, flexible use of the proceeds. You can use the proceeds for whatever you need. So this risk product was developed by a UK-based parametric insurance specialist, Global Parametrics, and the funds for underwriting was provided from the Natural Disaster Fund. And the policies were offered for sale by the Dominica Cooperative Societies League using an innovative blockchain-based sales portal that was developed by Diagon Consulting. And this allows for a highly secure mode of delivering the smart contracts and managing the administration of the policies digitally. This product is being further refined to include other categories, such as excess rainfall and drought, and to support a wider national rollout next year. So I would stop right now, and I would be happy to take whatever questions that you may have in respect of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing this exciting opportunity for our local farmers and agro-processors who now have a solution to the inevitable acts of God. And as we continue to plan towards resilience and the discussions flow to address the technical assistance that has been created, particularly with our IICA technical specialist, Nekelia Gregoire-Carai, will now make a presentation, and Nekelia has been working with the team to address the technical training capacity for farmers, extension officers, and forest rangers and others affiliated, particularly as it relates to knowledge about climate smart agriculture concepts and approaches so that they can contribute to the increasing resilience and sustainable development of the agricultural sector. So at this juncture, I would like to welcome Nekelia Gregoire-Carai to make a brief presentation. After Nekelia, we will be joined by Joan and of course entertain questions. We are now really into the meat of our panel discussion at the halfway mark. And so we will be joined now by Nekelia, followed by Joan, and open the discussion. Nekelia?
Good night, everybody, and thank you for having me. It is indeed a pleasure to be here today to share with you the training programs that we are doing the UNDP with, and special thanks to the UNDP for having me here this evening. Myself and Dr. Chinny St. Martin, as part of the Climate Change and Natural Resource Program of IICA, in thinking of executing this training component of this project, we thought of how can we have these projects be sustainable after the end? And therefore, we need the beneficiaries, would have included the extension officers, the foresters, as well as the farmers, to take ownership of the various components of the project. And in so doing, that the knowledge sharing and adoption of best practices in the agriculture sector will continue even long after the project has ended. So in thinking of that, and thinking of climate smart agriculture, we keep hearing the term good agricultural practices. And we looked at the three pillars of climate smart agriculture, which is the food security component, the adaptation component, and the mitigation component as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions. And we also took into consideration the fact that we are now mainly operating in the virtual world, and we need this training to be interactive. We need the participants to want to be there. So in designing that, we decided that normally we have trainings as we have consultants, we have trainers, normally which are foreigners coming, do the trainings, the project ends, and then that's it. So what we thought is we have a lot of persons in the country, in Dominica, with the capability of executing trainings. So we realized that we need to build on that capacity of these individuals. So as this training, we initially did a training needs assessment, because there are several trainings going on in different projects. You have the Ministry of Agriculture conducting their individual trainings. So we need to identify what areas that the beneficiaries are lacking in, and from that we would design the training to meet those needs. So that was the first component of that of this training. And then what we will have is we design it as cohorts where we'll have a maximum of 4 part of the training. In that way, we will have everybody being interactive, because Online, if we have more than 5 persons, you tend to get only 2 people interacting and the others do not participate, and we want the knowledge to be shared. So we looked at the certified trainers of IICA. We'll conduct the first phase of the training as a pyramid. After when we designed it in such a way where you have several modules. So we teach the first module on what is climate, the whole concept of climate smart agriculture, after which we allow about a 2-week break to allow the participants to go ahead and share that knowledge that they gain from the training, and to train another extension officer and to train another farmer. And then we have the succession planning, where after this project ends, you'll have a group of persons who could take over and continue on with these trainings. And as part of this training also, we will provide some additional training in how various techniques that they can utilize in training. But overall, in terms of the project, as it relates to climate, as it relates to building livelihood, as for a country like Dominica, which is very mountainous, a lot of the areas experience high winds, heavy rainfall. And so we need to tailor that. All good practice is not for everybody, is not for all location. A practice you would implement on the west coast of Dominica, which tends to be on the dry side, even if it's on a hillside like you would have had somewhere in the central of Dominica, that practice would require some adjustments, as the central part of Dominica, you get a lot more rainfall than the west coast. So we took all of this into consideration and we designed that, especially with behind our mind that we need the continuity, we need the continued sharing of knowledge, we need to build this cohort of individuals, country, tap into the resources, tap into the skills and the capabilities, and use them now to continue training additional extension officers, have the farmers train each other as a peer-to-peer train, as we do have a lot of farmers with that capability, and we tend to overlook these farmers. And this is the opportunity that we are taking now to include them and be part of that for continuity in terms of building knowledge, as well as bringing back a lot of the old technology and the old practices and merging it with the new, because we speak a lot of climate change, we speak a lot of increasing temperatures, as we see in the Caribbean, intensity of hurricanes and increasing, and we need to take charge there, and we need to have the resource persons. We have them. It's a matter of building the capacity for continuity and sustainability. So I will stop there for now, and I will take any added questions as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening to each and everyone. Good evening to each and everyone on this panel. Thanks to UNDP and IICA for choosing me to be on this panel. On this panel. Good evening to you, our moderator. I'm very elated to be part of this panel, this prestigious group, our panelists, moderator, and all those who are tuning in on television, Facebook, via radio. Pleasant good evening. My name is Joan. I live in the village of Delis, which is situated in the parish of St. Patrick in the southeast of our beautiful country, Dominica. I am a farmer, full-time farmer. I'm also serve on the village council as a councillor. I am also a member of the Dominica Red Cross. I am a past PTA president, that is Parents Teachers Association. And I enjoy working with the elderly and the vulnerable in my community. I'm also a member of the disaster committee in my village. My village. The rightful name for Delis it means delightful. And our population is 516 people with over between 200 and 300 households. Our community, Delis, is one of the most heavily impacted communities re-disasters. Example, we have the tropical storm Erika. We lost our beautiful Jungle Bay Resort, and we had one fatality in our community where the slide came down during that time, and we had the loss of a member in our community. With tropical storm Erika, we had our famous Boetica Bridge being washed away, and also even in our community, roads, we had a gorge right in the community of Delis, and you know the rest with pitted savannah. So we were shot on at the other side. We were shot in at the other side. We were shot in the Boetica side. So we were locked in. So which means that we had no transportation going neither to the north, neither to the west, neither to the east, neither to the south. Hurricane Maria struck hard, but we built back better, resilient roofs and houses, and many government-assisted homes, especially we had the apartment complex as well. And they are the main body responsible for disaster is our Delis Disaster Committee. We have a committee whenever there is a disaster to execute plans even before and after a disaster. So this committee made up of nurse, we have our nurse, we have our police officer, we have village council, members of the community as well, and we have Michael Etienne together with 3 others who are trained for Caribbean emergency resilient training, that is CERT. We also are training radio communication. And our disaster committee plan of action identified risk areas in community. So in terms of disaster, we can relocate persons or encourage persons to move. And we keep drains clear with the assistance of the National Employment Program. There is a group who works with the National Employment Program that can see to it that all drains and whatnot on culverts are unblocked and being well kept. We also keep public meetings, and even before a natural disaster, we keep public meetings where we execute our action plan before and after a disaster. Now, concerning our farming and with Toloma Agro-Processing, Toloma has a long shelf life. Once you see, you wash your Toloma, you grind your Toloma, you strain your Toloma, you clean it out, and you dry it properly. Some people have solar houses, some don't. They get it straight from the sun. But I for one, I dry mine directly from the sun. I'm a Toloma farmer as well, as you will notice. And when I dry my Toloma, I make sure I dry it properly. I package it, I repackage it again, because with the long shelf life, we have to keep it safe away from liquid, any form of liquid, whether it's rain or any kind of liquid. You have to make sure that it is well kept. And Toloma is also a resilient crop because why? It bears underground. It is an underground root crop. So we have the benefits from Toloma is that is finance for families. When we sell to the markets, is finance coming in for the families to pay bills. We send our children to school, whether it be primary, whether it's secondary, whether it's college. We can send our children to school, and it's also used for putting back. It is all the finance is always is also good for putting back into the crop, because when you uproot, you plant the plants, so you need labor, you need inputs to make sure that you can sustain your agro business. But we have challenges, and I believe we have a lot of challenges. And the number one challenge we have as a Toloma farmer is marketing. Markets, currently the farmers, we have no market for our Toloma. Is no permanent, I would say, no permanent market for our Toloma. After we have done all that work, and then we are sometimes, awaiting a sale, and well, for now, it is on a lull, according to because of COVID-19 and all the travel restrictions, and people do not go out to buy, and all that have to be taken into consideration because of COVID-19. And then due to that, we have to replant. We have to look after what we have planted. Now the labor cost is so high, and as women, we need men at the back of us. We do not go ahead, as women to do the heavy lifting and the heavy digging and the heavy planting. We do not go towards that, but we need men at the back of us to stand. So we need labor. That is number two. First is market, and number two is labor. Number three, we also need inputs as women to really keep that our business, agro-business going. And the women, we have other crops as well. We have other crops in our we do as well, other than Toloma. We do with the cassava, the cassava, we do we do farine, we do cassava bread. And I saw in town where a guy by the church is doing wraps. He's doing wraps with cassava, with the cassava when they grind it. And we have bay oil as well. Bay oil, we use bay oil to in perfumes. We need it it is a mosquito repellent. It is all they use it to make bay rum and aftershave lotion. It is a disinfectant too. So here comes Mr. COVID-19, and then you can use that bay oil as a disinfectant in your homes. So women love using that disinfectant when they are disinfecting their homes, they are cleaning their homes and or offices, wherever you are, and that smell of that bay oil, will give you a high, as I will see. But let me say, we go to cocoa. We have some of us, we go into cocoa. And one main thing, I wish there were more areas there we can use cocoa, because I love chocolate, and I know some people on this panel love chocolate. I know other people around the world love chocolate, but I really believe somebody should do a business or go into business in producing chocolate. But for now, our cocoa is to drink a hot cocoa tea, which is very delicious. And then I will speak about the famous Big G with his pepper sauce. To those of us who like our food spicy, or fish or meat or barbecue, whatever we have, we like spicy food. I mean, Big G pepper sauce is always on the shelf, has made a name for himself in the community, in the nation, and I believe in the world, in the outside world. And so I believe that is it on my discussion tonight. So if there are any questions, I would answer after we are done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. We want to thank you for your presentation. And for those of you joining us, Joan is one of our local agro-processors right here in Dominica, from the beautiful village of Delis. As she has explained, the meaning of Delis is delightful. Her main crop is Toloma, which she grows and processes for the local and regional markets. And Joan has shared some of the challenges and the involvement of both men and women. As we discuss the objectives of this panel discussion, it is really to highlight the importance of strengthening livelihoods and building resilience while paying attention to the differentiated needs of women and men. This panel discussion is brought to you as part of the Strengthening the Disaster Management Capacity of Women in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Commonwealth of Dominica. This project has been funded by the Government of Japan and implemented by the United Nations Development Programme. The program partners are the Ministry of Blue and Green Economy, Agriculture and National Food Security, the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, the University of Reading, Inter-American Institute of Cooperation in Agriculture, IICA, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the Office of Disaster Management, and the Dominica Met Services, Gender Bureau, and the Dominica National Council of Women. So many partners who have been involved in this exciting program, putting a spotlight of building resilience in agriculture. I want to thank all of my panelists tonight. They have given us a very in-depth understanding of what has been happening here with the UNDP Dominica team and partners. And at this point in time, I would really like to open the floor to questions. We have been talking finance. We have had the opportunity to hear from the microfinance specialist, Monica Rogers-Fletcher, and she has shared with us how the approach to include technical development support and a focus on capacity building and finance has been integrated. We also heard from Mr. Kent Koppel, who spoke about the value chain and his presentation touching on the descriptions of the value chain assignments, the purpose and benefits, and of course, looking into the e-commerce platform, how can our farmers here benefit from that technical assistance under the project, and how are they being supported into the Internet of Things and dealing with e-commerce. We also heard from his colleague, Nekelia, who shared of the approach to training, and of course, Ambassador Francine Byron gave us an update from CREAD and the exciting announcement of a new insurance package for farmers. At this point, I would like to open up the panel discussion for questions that has been filtering through, and I would now like to pause to entertain these questions. I will take these questions and pose these questions to our panelists. I have the very first question coming through from Mr. Kent Koppel, and the question is, how is the project helping to support the challenge of market that Joan would have mentioned or has mentioned, in her presentation? How has the project been helping to support the challenge of market that has been mentioned by the agro-processors or being experienced by the agro-processors?
Okay, thanks again. And that's I like the question. We start with market. It always starts with the market and go back to production. In my presentation, I made mention to one of the assignment or one of the activities that we intend to do is to understand the buyers in the market. And I mentioned the domestic, regional, and international markets. We would like to create the linkage between the producer or processor in that case to these markets, and to create the environment that the market can access in quick time or make contact in quick time with our producers and processors. Now, one of the things that we have done is to develop what we call a directory that do have the contact information for both producers and most of the markets. And we continue now to expand this directory where we can have a better profile of the markets and what the markets are looking for. I made mention of the e-commerce platform that we are trying, where we are working towards developing and establishing, that will allow sort of access again to the producers or their products rather, by developing a market profile for our beneficiaries so that they can present their product on the virtual space, within the virtual space or the digital market that persons can access and be able to contact and purchase your product. But I also want to make a slight deviation in terms of market and looking at the product like Toloma. We also have to look at the value added components, moving away from just this Toloma as a starch and looking at other products that can be developed using Toloma as a base, whether it's in terms of drinks, punches, nutrition bars, that could increase the various market segments, can increase the market for the product in itself, rather than just looking at only one product at this time. So these are some of the things that we are looking towards in terms of this particular assignment, and we are hoping that at the end of it we could have a greater interaction between the processor, producer, and the market.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I also have some additional questions coming from our Zoom platform. And if it's one thing that we in Dominica understand very clearly, that farming really and truly has been the backbone of our economy for so many years. As we, under this project, attempt to address some of the challenges, our panelists have spoken about the various interventions, and particularly the resilience framework is focusing a lot on how can we get resilience mapped into our strategic mindset and planning processes. And I have someone asking, can you please tell us a little bit more about the farmers' crop insurance? Any information available on the cost of the premium insurance, minimum or maximum, and if there is an option for farmers group insurance. So I have this question posed. I think perhaps Monica or Francine can share in this context if there is that sort of information available at this time.
Perhaps I could go first, and I am sure that Ambassador Byron could add more details as we go along. I can tell you that the microfinance mechanism, through the resource that is being distributed by one of the financial institutions that is administering the mechanism, the parametric insurance is built into the mechanism. It's part of it. So any of our loan beneficiaries who is accessing the funding, the finance mechanism that is available for them to invest in alternate livelihoods, they will, as part of that mechanism, have access to the parametric insurance. But I would really like for the ambassador to speak perhaps into outside of the mechanism, maybe how would it be possible to access the insurance and its costs and so on?
Okay, so just to indicate that the flexible hurricane protection product developed by CREAD, it's geared towards the individual, and the individual has the opportunity to determine at what level they require coverage. So you could choose coverage at a cost of 200, 500, 1,000. It depends on what your level of interest is in terms of the risk that you would want to cover. I think the insurance, parametric insurance that's being developed under the IICA project is slightly different from that. And perhaps somebody from IICA might want to provide further information in relation to exactly how their parametric insurance product actually works. In the case of the flexible hurricane protection, it is based at this point only on wind speed. As I indicated earlier, it's been further refined to include a situation where you may have excessive rainfall, or you may have a situation of drought. So you may want to purchase protection for the eventualities of having excess rainfall or drought, as well as wind damage, and you determine which category you would be interested in having coverage for. Eventually, one can look perhaps at the possibility of group insurance coverage. And as I indicated, this product is continuing to be developed. And so maybe in the future, group insurance may be possible. But at this point, it is on an individual basis, and the premiums payable, you choose what you want, what level of coverage you want, and what you're willing to pay. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you. You have just been addressing some of the important follow-on questions as it relates to the synergies between the crop insurance and the flexible hurricane plan. Thank you so much for that. I have another question that has been posed, and I'm taking as many questions as we can. How was the project able to overcome any technical capacity gaps that farmers may have had? And I believe this question is being posed to Nekelia as it relates to, the training structure and how they may have been able to sort of provide the support needed to farmers who may have had maybe challenges with e-commerce platforms and all of that. So Nekelia, this question is to you. How has the project been able to overcome any technical capacity gaps that farmers may have had?
So in terms of technical capacity gap, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, what we did is a training needs assessment, because we are aware a lot of farmers, a lot of the extension officers, as well as the forest rangers have taken part in a lot of trainings. So that's where the needs assessment came in to help us identify a lot of the critical areas and the priority areas that they would like additional training on. We also, in part of the needs assessment, is we also identified if they would prefer basic or advanced training based on their level of knowledge. We also looked at asking them how capable do they feel in executing trainings. So a lot of that gap would be identified in our training needs assessment. And from that, now we would have designed the training to provide that sort of additional knowledge training to meet these gaps that we would have identified.
So Anna, just a follow on, sorry, Nekelia, just a follow on.
Yes.
We noted that in the training structure, some of the key components, firstly, there were two phases, a first and second phase. But in the second phase, my interest has been piqued on the peer-to-peer training using a pyramid model. Can you share this very interesting, peer-to-peer learning opportunity where farmers would have been, young farmers would have been able to learn from stalwarts and persons who have been well established in the farming industry and sector? Can you share that with us?
Right. So the concept behind this model is that we have persons who have educational background as it relates to school. We have persons with the capability as it relates to being involved in agriculture for several years. And where this peer-to-peer comes in, at times you have a lot of persons that tend to feel more comfortable having trainings, and it's easier for them to understand the jargons that their peers use. Unlike if you have a technical person come in and you have these technical jargons, it will be difficult for some of the farmers to really identify and keep interested in the training if we continue using all these technical jargons. So while we would bring in at the first level the technical trainers in, then as part of the training, we also develop these training manuals where we would have the trainer's manual, which would contain a lot of the technical jargons. Then we would have the participants manual, which would break down further. And then we have the participants reader that will provide the trainees with additional information and additional reference material. So that's where that comes in. And then when we look at sustainability and continuity, by giving the farmers that that they can take ownership, their self-esteem, and bring them in, that can continue in the farming community without having any sort of formal training. So they're now taking ownership and they're now feeling comfortable to execute these sorts of training because they would have received the training. Then we will have that continuity. But as part of the training, at the first level, we would train for a few farmers, extension officers. Then we allow them to train another farmer and another extension officer, all at which we will be present to support them in executing that training. And then we will go back to the trainers and go into module 2. We'll review. That gives us quality control, see what we need to improve on, what we need to probably change our style of execution. And then from there, the cycle continues. So that is the whole concept behind it. It allows comfort. It allows for a mix because everybody is not able to learn in the same way or at the same pace or with the same sort of technicality as it relates to training.
Thank you so much, Nekelia, for sharing that very in-depth explanation that the training plan and all of the training components have been well thought out, and we trust that the execution has been seamless. I want to direct the next question to Mr. Coipel. Of course, the excitement of finance is always a question that comes up. How can we access more resources to make better decisions and to help us prepare for the inevitable? But with all of this talk, particularly with Nekelia highlighting the peer-to-peer and the highlights from Monica as to the approach to incorporating, that development aspect. How has the youth been incorporated into this project, Kent? And then finally, a follow-on from that question from Facebook. We have the Dominica Manufacturers Association. We have Dexia. Are we able to collaborate to secure regional and international markets, which Joan, our hero Toloma farmer, has alluded to, and which I know Joan has already gone regional. But how has the youth been incorporated, and how can we continue to connect with other agencies so that we can safeguard and protect the benefits that have come out of this UNDP project?
Thanks again, and I'll take the aspect of the youth. While the focus has been on developing women and trying to identify with some of the vulnerabilities affecting their livelihood and the ability to improve or to sustain their businesses, when we did the various analysis, we actually made the effort to reach not only the women, but we also did the analysis on the young people involved in agriculture, both in terms of production, primary production, and processing. If you notice, when we spoke, at least when I spoke from the market end, we are moving more and more to the digital environment. Again, looking at the use of certain technologies, using the issue of e-commerce, the issue of information, and being able to access information quickly. Some of these things would require us now to place a lot of emphasis on the younger persons that are trainable to provide certain services. Some of the activities that we are involved in are still ongoing, and therefore it would require us to reach out further with some of the persons along the value chain. And I think a lot of these people that we're going to be working with are going to be in the age range that we could consider to be pretty young, because we know we have an aging farmers' population, and we recognize even for some of the groups that we are working with, we have identified, we need to now bring into that mix the younger generation, the younger persons. So what we intend to do is, as we build, and I made mention of the issue of the clusters, as we build those clusters, we would like to introduce more and more of the younger persons that can provide certain services that they're better capable of doing. Now, you mentioned DMA and Dexia. They play an integral role. I'll take Dexia for instance. Dexia plays an important role again in assisting in identifying and building relationships with certain markets. They also have a direct trading arm that they also support the export of primary products, and in some cases, partially processed products. And they can assist in the consolidation, which is an important aspect. They do have facilities, infrastructure that can contribute to improvement of how you handle of the post-harvest aspects of certain commodities, and to consolidate prior to shipping. So we know that from the analysis, and as I indicated, that part of the assignment was to evaluate and assess the relationships among the chain actors. And this is one of the actors along the value chain that we assessed, and look at the relationship between themselves and producers themselves and processors. And we have made certain recommendations as to how we could integrate them in supporting the farmers reaching these markets. Now, in terms of sustenance, and I like that that's an aspect that we have to look at. And when we talk about resilience, we're talking about taking a strategic approach in sustainability, and market is very important. So DMA, from a point of view of being an umbrella organization, they have a big role to play in helping some of the smaller subsidiary groups, and we're hoping that a number of those producer groups do have membership under the DMA, because the DMA will serve as a broader or bigger hub to supporting the smaller associations in first looking at the issue of market and access to market, sharing of information, quick access to information in some of the markets, or some of the membership that they may have beyond just those producer groups, because DMA also do have representation in terms of processors, and they do have a link to some of the domestic as well as the regional markets. So we'd like to use them as a conduit to empower or to strengthen some of those local organization, as well as to create an opportunity for persons to reach certain markets. And again, we are moving more and more where we need to consolidate. We need to be able to spread the risk, share resources in terms of accessing certain markets. And I think what we can do and what we'll continue to do as part of the assessment is to really define some clear paths, clear roadmaps as to how we can utilize the various partners, the various organizations, and the various agencies to support what is being done at the community level, and to be able to really provide the kind of service that will allow for some sustainability in what we're trying to achieve. So I hope that I answered what the persons were inquiring in.
Thank you so much, Kent, for that response. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists and speakers on this panel discussion: finance, value chain, and climate smart agriculture in disaster risk reduction, under the theme Preparing Communities Today for Disaster Resilience Tomorrow. We have been talking agriculture. I would like to take this opportunity. We are now at the end of this discussion. We wanted you to know that this has been a program that's a week of activity, highlighting the work of the UNDP team. Specifically, we want to take the opportunity to thank our funding government, the government of Japan, and the United Nations Development Program that this project is being implemented by, and all of our partners, particularly here in Dominica, the Ministry of Blue and Green Economy, Agriculture, and national food security, particularly the Division of Agriculture through the Agricultural Extension units, all of the farmer beneficiaries. Of course, we must recognize the work of the team leads and the extension officers within the project targets, the behind the scenes contributors from the UNDP Dominica team, our many farmers, Mr. Kent Koppel, technical specialist in the IICA delegation in Dominica, his colleague Nekelia, Gregoire-Carai, who is the technical specialist in water and soil with the IICA delegation here in Dominica. Much thanks to our microfinance consultants and the executive director at John Maxwell, Monica Rogers, and we are so pleased that we were also joined by Ambassador Francine Byron, the Chief Executive Officer of the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica. All of the hopes and dreams of Dominica as it relates to resilience is riding squarely on her shoulders. Tonight we were cued into some of the outcomes of that investment and heard about the new insurance programs available or offering available to farmers. Of course, Joan Hillaire, our very loved Toloma farmer and agro-processor from beautiful Delis, join us to talk about Toloma and the challenges of agro-processing, but importantly, some of the investments that she has been able to benefit from and some of the work that farmers in DDCs has been able to access as part of this project. On that note, I thank you so much for joining us on this very important panel discussion. A reminder that the work continues as we seek to highlight the importance of strengthening livelihoods and building resilience with attention to the differentiated needs of men and women. On this note, I thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our partners at UETV and all of the contributions that we have had this evening, contributors from the various panelists or guests sitting in. I thank you so much on behalf of the UNDP team in Dominica. Thank you for joining us.